You're still on to our breakfast TV show this morning. Good morning, Anambra. And the topic we are going to be looking at this morning is global economic crisis, deflation in China, the consequences in Nigerian economy. We have two guests seated right here in the studio this morning that will help us to talk about deflation. You know, we are conversant with the word inflation, and now we are talking about deflation. So we talk about it. We talk about the global impact and also how it can have impact on Nigeria economy. These and many more are what we'll be discussing this morning on Good Morning Anambra. And I have my colleague seated right here with me this morning, Ajulu Chukwu Okabwe. AJ, good morning.
Good morning, Chirima. Viewers, let us really talk about global economy, and then we have two gentlemen here that will really do justice to what we have. Sit back and relax.
All right, and our guests this morning are Chukwu Nonso Ekesiobi. He's a lecturer with Chukwu Emeka Odumegwu Ojukwu University, Iwariam campus. Glad to have you on the show.
Good morning.
And we have Ichie Mike Odumoto, financial and management consultant. Good to have you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, listeners and viewers all over the world.
And we are welcoming both of you again together this morning.
It's a good combination.
Good combo, right? All right. So we're glad.
In
crime?
In economic analysis.
Analysis, yes. Right. Okay, good to have you on the show this morning. Let's start with you, Chukwu Emeka. Okay?
Chukwu Nonso.
Sorry. Chukwu Nonso. Let's start with you. Just like I said earlier, introduction that China has begun to suffer deflation, and it means that there are a whole lot of things. The prices are falling, and we have a high inflation. Is very bad. But then again, just like I said earlier, we are used to inflation in this part of the world. Because I know every time they say that Nigeria, we're having inflation and all that in Nigeria, but now we are talking about deflation. Please, can you give us an overview of what deflation is? I mean, for people that are watching us this morning, laymanly, just explain it in the way we can understand. What is it all about?
Deflation, like you rightly alluded, is the opposite of inflation that we are used to.
Yes.
While inflation looks at persistent, rises in general price level, the deflation is the opposite. At this time around, general price level in the economy are dropping consistently. And to a layman, you want to say that's why should we be bothered if prices are dropping? That is an answered prayer. That at least we should be celebrating that prices are dropping, and you will not be far from the truth if you think like that, because globally as we speak, while the world is experiencing inflation, serious inflation pressures in the U.S., in Europe, and even in Africa, Nigeria, to be precise, we have been experiencing. I think our recent inflation figure for June increased from 22.4% to about 22.7 or so percent. So you can see that prices are rising everywhere. But why is China experiencing the opposite? And you would say that the reasons are not far-fetched. That prices are falling in China is because, one, this COVID issue started from China. The coronavirus itself. So they were extremely, tough on their anti-COVID measures, the lockdowns, the shutdown of the economy, and so on and so forth. So while other countries have, transitioned away from the post-COVID or post-lockdown era, the Chinese economy is yet to adjust away from that. And again, you have to look at it is not the way you tighten an economy. That is the same way you loosen it. It's very easy to destroy. You can destroy this studio in a day, but you cannot rebuild it in a day. So you see, the economy works with certain macroeconomic fundamentals, which the Chinese economy, remember, is not a purely free market economy in the sense that it's a state-managed economy with a one-party system. So you see that while they are expanding, they are trying to reflate their economy. They are doing so with cautious optimism. So you see that when you bring in that issue of COVID, then you bring in the fact that some persons, because of the activities during the lockdown, they noticed that yes, global demand fell actually. Then when we came out from COVID, the demand increased overnight. So many Chinese manufacturers, overproduced and especially those who had overstocked, waiting for the market to open so that they can flood. So when they did that, the global economy did not necessarily recover the way they expected. And even in the domestic Chinese economy, the Chinese economy has been experiencing this drop in prices because there are some internal challenges they have there as well. Because, for instance, they have a housing crisis. We saw what happened with Evergrande and the housing market in China and how it collapsed. Similar to what happened when we experienced the 2008 global financial crisis. It started from a housing market crisis in the US. So you can see that because of that, everybody there does not want to suffer or does not want to experience what they experience in America. So everybody is becoming cautious. And when people are cautious, they cut down on spending. You don't want, everybody is pessimistic. So when everybody is cutting down on spending, what happens? Definitely demand will fall. And when demand has fallen, definitely the producers who have stocked goods already, we want to sell them off by reducing prices. But even as they are reducing prices, people are not, the demand is not responding that way. And again, when you are reducing prices, it means you are cutting down on costs. If you used to produce 100, maybe quantity, you will be producing 80. To produce 80, you will let go of some factors of production.
And that you will not get the money that you put in production.
That's it now. So since you are not recovering a lot of your money, you have to cut down on costs, meaning you will send some people back home. So that unemployment that is creeping up in China as we speak is also a problem, especially among the youths. 1 in every 5 Chinese now is said to be unemployed. And those who are employed are the verge of being, disengaged. So you see all this tension. Who will consume when people are not employed? Is it the money you don't have that we use to consume? So all this negative tension. And again, take note that we will still come to that, but we know that China is at the center of what is going on globally. The global economic order is changing. We don't need to deny that fact. Before it used to be America and the West, that's Europe. But now, if you ignore China, you ignore it at your own peril.
Okay. Ichi, we are talking about the second largest economy, China, and they are facing this deflation that we are looking at. If this persists, of course, it's going to affect the world economy. So let's look at how this will impact on the economy of the world globally.
Thank you very much. Looking at China and what is happening now, my friend has extensively talked on that, but there are other main issues, that are related to the problem. China, as we speak, no matter the way they have come up, they were locked up some years back. It was around the 1970s that they opened their borders to the international community, because it was a communist nation and they were practicing communism. Everything belongs to the state, and whatever you get as you need and all that. And they saw that it was a total deceit. So when they opened their borders to the world, they started practicing mixed economy. It is mixed economy, more of capitalism, that propelled them into the world, world position, to be seen them as a giant.
Yes.
So they came up to that. now that they have come up to that, they are not grounded on managing those the aspects of those manufacturing, because in terms of manufacturing, they are the highest in the world. They manufacture what the world consumes. So they are not experts. So when the COVID thing came up, they had their policies. And remember, it's a one-party system where it's only the president that talks. They have human rights issues everywhere. They have the problem of aging. The Chinese population is aging because there is this policy. As at 2004, I was working with some Chinese in Enugu, and when he was telling me it's only him and his wife
Are allowed to have
allowed to have only one child. And you can imagine where a husband and wife has one child. Over the years, the population will keep going down. And the death rate, the birth rate is lower than death rate. So you see that they have older people. The Chinese have older people because they're not dying, just like other countries in the world. So these things militate against them until recently, when they said husband and wife can have 3 children. That is the position now. So China again, in recent time, went and started some relationship, economic, political, international political relationship with a country like Russia. And when they did that, remember there was a time Blinken said something about China, because they asked China, what is your position? What are you for Russia or are you against them? And they said, no, they're just mediating. They would go to Ukraine and mediate, go to Russia and mediate. So, and the diplomacy of America and Europe is something you cannot joke with. So, after all these things, the consumption of Chinese made products started to reduce. Presently, Europe and America are not comfortable with China. So that is why there were withdrawals from the consumption, from importation of certain products made in China. And Nigeria alone, or Africa alone, is not enough, because America is a major consumer of Chinese products, just like other European nations, because they have the money. So it is one of the things that is militating against them. And that COVID, as we have said, is one other thing. So the economy started going down. People are no more rushing. Even the global issue we are talking about is, one of them is about the war in Ukraine. So because of the war in Ukraine, there are so many other things are affected. Import of foods are not reaching out to the people. So people don't have the resources to buy as much as they were buying before. So China had to go back to the drawing board. Even though they are still doing well, they have not gone under, really. But the thing is that for the first time in more than 2 decades, China is going into deflation. They are having some issues. So thank you very much.
In my own estimation, I think China, let me begin with, it's a model that every nation needs to really look into and see how well they can grow their economy. I think China has really come up to tell us that within the space of 40 years from being in the dungeons of developed world, now they are about the second. In my own estimation, I feel they're even the first, because if you become the manufacturing hub of the entire world, what stops you from being first? We're just talking about economics. But now, the sweetest part of it all is, in my own estimation, is that apart from China, now that they've been overtaken by India as the world's most populous nation with just a fraction of about 1 million, you understand? When you think about the largest export to the world, China has 136 million Chinese every part of the world. And these 136 million are bringing returns back home. That is how the Chinese have been able to fashion their economy. They don't just produce in their China, but they still produce elsewhere and then make returns. So when we're talking about the deflation in China, is it something for the entire world to worry about, or do we need to like ask for the imprint? Because China has survived more, or let's say economic finance, and then still spring up and they are doing well than other countries. What do you have to say about that?
Definitely, the world should be worried that the Chinese economy is experiencing deflation. Not like we have said. Normally, economic activity does not move in a straight line. Normally, it should fluctuate. It's just like you saying a human being. Once in a while, your body system may go down. But what counts is how long it took you to recover. Mm-hmm. So that they've entered deflation rather, does not mean that we should start ringing alarm bells yet. It is now when this deflation, continue to persist that we should be getting worried. Like you alluded to, the Chinese economy is with about 20 trillion. I think it's about $20 trillion economy. Very close to the US, but I think on purchasing power parity terms, the Chinese economy and the American economy are almost the same. So if there's something wrong with the Chinese economy, definitely everybody should be bothered. Globalization has made countries more connected through trade, through migration, through financial flows, and so on and so forth. So anything that happens to any country will definitely affect the other. More than it should have. In fact, technology has even made it even more connected than it was. So definitely when China is experiencing this thing, I just want to maybe see if we can bring it down to Nigeria. Again, you made a very important point that, in fact, if you look at virtually 2/3 of all countries in the world, if you check their top 5 trading partners, China is there. So China is virtually in business with everybody, one way or the other, one sector or the other. So when anything happens to China, it should worry us. And if I want to come back home, like we are here to discuss, there are a lot of issues that should bother us as far as the Chinese economy is concerned. Because on the one hand, you remember I mentioned that the United States and Europe, they're experiencing inflation there. So that China is experiencing deflation is a good news to them, because when you trade with them at this point, you are buying commodities from them cheaper. So it will come in there and it will come to their countries cheaper and lessen the inflation they are already experiencing. But in our own case, it's very different. First and foremost, you look at our export diversification. We trade with China in virtually everything. So when this thing happens, when there is a deflation in the economy, it means that they will demand less of what they need, to run their economy. Those things that they normally get from us through trade, they will demand less. And when they demand less, it means that our trade surplus will come down, because those people, our major trading partner, experiencing a challenge. I don't want to call it a crisis yet, a challenge. So when our trading activities with them drops, it will also affect us now, definitely, because our revenue we are supposed to get from exporting crude oil, exporting other raw materials that they get from us. When those things drop, definitely our export will drop. And if our export drops, definitely our revenue will also drop. And also, another fundamental thing again is not just the revenue. Again, our what's it called? Our exchange rate, our currency will also continue to devalue, because we get foreign exchange through trade. Then what is it again? In terms of investment, you see most Chinese companies around, especially construction companies in Nigeria, undertaking one project or the other. But if this deflation continues, it means that with falling prices in their country, they will have falling revenues as well. So these companies will not be so eager to be undertaking projects outside their economy like that, because they don't have the money. Their monies are dropping. So when they don't undertake these projects, we will also suffer. The contracts that they have been planning to bid for or they are undertaking we experience one slowdown or the other. Again, those who are active, Chinese investors who are active in our financial markets, we also, want to pull their resources, some of their resources, back home to show up what is going on at home. So if they remove their money from our financial market, our financial market will slow down. The market signals. In fact, it's not just our financial market, global financial market, the US stock exchange, the South African stock exchange, the European stock exchange, all of them will experience one drop or the other because Chinese investors will not be so bullish again, and the market on our own side will be bearish. So there are a lot of other, this thing that we can continue later.
Let's come to you, Chair, because I know you want to add one or two to what he just said. Just like he rightly said that we have taken China as a very close ally, trading partners. I remember there was a time that they even proposed that we started using yuan here in Nigeria and all that. Well, it didn't fly anymore. But then we know that most of the goods we have in the market is made in China. The clothes, the wares, the electronics, most of the things that we are importing from China. And maybe because their prices are a little bit lower than when we import from other countries like Turkey and Indonesia and all that. But we are talking about Chinese. So what impact will this have on Nigeria economy? Of course, where we are financially as a nation now.
Thank you very much. I think the issue with China or Chinese economic crisis, it will certainly have issues with Nigeria will have issues because of the problem in China, certainly, because it's our great trading partner, and because of that, if they're not producing the things they used to produce, because if you go to the market now, that's on the side of the issue where we're having the issues now. It wasn't all those things that you see in the market originally that are still there now. So some time ago, if you go to the market, you see most of this pressing iron is made from China. The other one is from China. But the goods that are coming from China now, the products are a bit limited. So we don't have, hands on most of those products again, because there are no more coming in. That is the issue we are having. But the other issue we are having is well, it is not an issue anyway. It's a gain, because when the prices are down, we will be able to buy. Now that they're having problems, the prices of those commodities in China are down. So if you go to China, aside from our exchange rate that is high, the prices of products in Nigeria are supposed to be very low now. But because of the exchange rate that the government just increased arbitrarily a few months ago, that is why we are still experiencing what we are experiencing. Otherwise, it is a good thing to Nigeria. If you are dealing with a partner and the prices of products in that country goes down, because you are importing, it is cheaper now for you. And on your home side, you see that the prices will go down, and you enjoy a very good, a very good trade. That's the thing with that. But the Nigerian situation is something that is terrible, because we are a consumer nation. We are only consuming. Because we are a consumer nation, we don't do any other thing. It is when we get the money, we increase, so that when you sell your products, you make so much dollar. That is the only area we are looking at, so that when we sell crude oil, so much money will be made. But we're not looking at the situation where if we want to buy products from other countries, that the prices will be low. So that's the problem we have. It's a consumer nation. We are not adding to anything. So I am saying that what is happening in China, even though they will stabilize, but it wouldn't cause any crisis in Nigeria. Instead, it will make Nigerian economy and Nigerian people, to have a kind of relief, aside from the exchange rate that was increased. So no matter how you try, the exchange rate has sabotaged whatever gain we want to get from what is happening in China.
Okay, so you're saying that it's not going to affect us adversely?
No.
We are supposed to be gaining from this.
Certainly.
So what about what about the Chinese investors that we have in Nigeria now? Don't you think that they could pull out what they have invested here to go back and see how they can restore their own economy?
No, you can't do that. You can't stay in a country where you are booming and say you want to go back to go and restore your economy. The government is there. It is the government that plans. The government will plan, put this one and this one together, and it will start to work. Originally, those people, those investors in Nigeria and other countries of the world, they have been there. And the economy in China has been booming. So for them to go back now, it means it is fight to finish. They want the economy of China to, all of them will just sink into the ocean. So,
thank you so much for the explanation. But then what I'm trying to juxtapose, talking about finance and then the economy now, with the advent of China being the, will I say, the manufacturing hub of the world, how come the yen is still very, very weak as compared to the dollar? What could be responsible for that? Since China is more of a producer nation and then a whole lot of manufacturing is happening there, how come the yen and the dollar are still in, clear water disparity?
The yen, I think that the yen is that of the Japanese economy. The yuan. Yeah, I know it's yuan. You see, if we keep the deflation issue aside, normally the Chinese government, the Chinese economy has been known as a serial offender when it comes to currency manipulation. The Chinese yuan is not a currency that you can take home as a competitively determined, rate. They have been found guilty on several occasions. Countries, economies have been calling them out, and rightly so, for devaluing their currency. They intentionally undervalue their currency. And why they do so is obvious economics, because when you make your currency, when you devalue your currency, it makes export cheaper and imports more expensive. So they do that to protect their domestic economy from the competition coming from outside. So we can say that yes, the yuan is low compared to the dollar, but it's a deliberate policy. They do that, and if the countries, especially the United States, have continued calling out China for this practice, but the Chinese don't want to know. Everybody is looking at their self-interest. But I want to still address something, like Chief said. You see, granted that it is a good thing, or it appears to be a good thing in the short term, that what we are buying from China has reduced in price. So definitely we'll be getting things cheaper. But in the long term, we shouldn't encourage it, because it will also kill our own domestic manufacturing if we continue bringing in cheap commodities. How do you expect our local producers to compete with with foreign imported goods? So we are exporting our jobs if we continue doing that, because we will not be able to produce here, and we will not be able to employ Nigerians, and we know we have an unemployment crisis. So in the short term, it can be a relief for Nigeria, because we are experiencing inflation. So yes, the goods can come in, but while we are doing so, we should be looking at import substitution strategies that we can now use to substitute these imports we are bringing in by encouraging our infant industries and local manufacturers. That's what I just wanted to add. But like you said, I'm just telling you that it's purely for political reasons, political economic reasons, that the dollar, the yuan is artificially, kept lower than what it should be.
Okay. All right, thank you so much for that explanation. Let's come back to you, Chi. Now, looking at what is happening in China, the deflation and everything that is happening all over the world, because we are talking about the second largest economy. Do you see them bouncing back quickly? Because from a report published by Bloomberg, they said that the consumer prices fell for the first time in more than 2 years in July this year. and this is happening now. So do you see them bouncing back again? I mean, students.
Certainly, China is bouncing back. There's no doubt about that. You know, issues with economic, ups and downs it is government, it is for a good government to look at it. If when you have an issue, for a functional government, you have crisis, you address the crisis because you have seen the root cause of the crisis. And once you address the root cause of the crisis, you keep going. So this is not a major, it's not a major issue with China. China will still add 1 + 1, and you see that where they will be going. Now, there was something I mentioned before about China, having some political relations with some big superpowers who are against America and Europe. And Europe said, China, what actually are you doing? So it is a major, let us not forget it. Let us not certainly forget it. You cannot play with Europe and America and get away with it. They will just dish out one diplomacy or one this issue, and you see how the country will shake, will be going down. And when you realize it, you come back and say, no, we are still working together, and you see yourself moving. You can imagine the whole of Europe, if they turn against China, what can China do? If they really mean to turn against China, in 1 year, China will collapse. So not because that China is the producing hub, manufacturing hub of the world. It doesn't mean that they cannot collapse. As far as they are keeping their allies, they will stand, especially Europe. Europe is an economy. Europe, America, they are economies that have transited over time. If anything happens here, they will touch it here and they will stand. Look at America. Do you know that this China we are talking about now, they had excess loan. They are defaulting on their loan with America. They had so much loan from America, and they have defaulted. So you can imagine if America wants to deal with them on this default now, they will give them, compound interest, and they will be paying. So that is the thing with, China. They have to calm down, look at the issues around them. It's not that they have this issue and they are going to go. No, they won't go. But certainly they will look at it and come back. They are not like African countries, that we just do something and they don't know what to do. They don't know their left from their right. It's like the president of Nigeria now and the Niger Republic. Sorry to, just in seconds. The Niger Republic had their issue, a political crisis, and army took over. And the president of Nigeria, who is heading ECOWAS, said we are going to war. And before you know it, he cut off power supply to Niger Republic. And what did the Niger do? It didn't take them just within minutes, they announced that that Niger Republic is no-flight zone. It's no-flight zone for Nigeria Airways or for Nigeria, any aircraft that is coming in or outside Nigeria. And if you know the map of Niger, you see that it covered the whole of Nigeria from the up north, from Sokoto, Meduguri, Lake Chad to Sokoto. All those areas is covered, even down a bit to around the Benin Republic. So that is the thing. So if you have, and the aircraft that were coming to Nigeria from Europe, they are now moving towards, you go through Mali, come through Burkina Faso, and before you enter Nigeria, and the airfares are now increased. So that is the position of Nigeria now, for doing a single thing of cutting off power supply to Niger. And supposing Mali, who is an ally to Niger, and Burkina Faso, another ally, these three countries are working together. And they border us almost all over. How can we move in and come out? So this is what we say, a country that is intelligent, a country that knows what they are doing. If anything happens, you will know how to scheme, and before you do something, you know what you're doing. You don't just come and do a pronouncement. So that's the thing with the Niger, with the issue on global political economic management. That's the issue with it. You don't just do whatever thing you want and think you will get away with it. You don't do that. So China actually have taken their lessons, though we have mentioned some other reasons, COVID, this, that, but that is not enough. There are some other issues of, relationship with, some other big countries. If it is okay, you keep moving.
Thank you so much. So since you're still talking about deflation in China and probably how it affects global economy and then the Nigerian economy specifically, you said there's nothing to worry, that China, being a superpower, definitely will know what to do in order to bounce back. What of the after effect in other economies? How will those economies bounce back based on the fact that China can do it better than others? What's your take on that?
Well, I don't want to look at other economies. They should go and look for their own experts to discuss that. But for the Nigerian, how will Nigeria bounce back? There are a lot of steps. There are a lot of things we can do. I will just rush through them maybe for want of time. The first one, Nigeria should look at diversifying our exports. Yes, non-oil exports for the past 5 years now has been bringing in more revenue than oil exports. Granted, but we can do more by improving our production and our export value chain. So we don't keep exporting, raw materials or semi-finished goods. We should move to the step of, improving our finished product so that we can gain more through trading. So when we gain more through trading, it lessens whatever is happening from China. Then again, we look at our domestic economy itself. How then do we diversify our productive base so that we can improve in critical sectors that we may be depending on China for? What are those sectors? Manufacturing. How do we boost local manufacturing to make sure that we are less dependent on what is coming in? Technology. Most of our gadgets do a good thing anyway, because minus the Chinese Android phones we have, how many of us could afford Apple iPhones and the rest? So we can be looking at how do we encourage technology in that space. The same way Nigerians are doing well in all these fintech areas, app development and the rest of them. We need to look at how do we come into the hardware of technology and not just the software alone. That is where the money is, as far as exports are concerned. Then again, we need to look at how do we finance infrastructural development, because if we finance infrastructural development, it will aid this manufacturing and all these things we're talking about. So we need to talk about what we are doing with power, transportation, security, so that all these things can help the boosting Nigerian economy. Then again, we also have to look at, bilateral relations. It is not only China that is the superpower or an ally. We need to start looking at how to create other strategic alliances, so that when one fails, we can fall on the other. We can go to that, because if you look at China is part of this BRICS economy, yeah. Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Now more countries are trying to come into that arrangement. You see, and why are they trying to expand their arrangement? They want to lessen the dependence on the Western-driven arrangement, the United Nations and co, because, like Chief pointed out, you cannot outsmart them in that area. So they are trying to see if they can build up another strong global alliance that will rival what America and Europe have started. So we need to be looking at exploring other options, so we don't depend on China, unnecessarily. Then we need to also leverage trade agreements like what we have in Africa. Let's start from home. What are we doing with ECOWAS? Look at ECOWAS now, is in crisis. because of maybe the unfortunate, will I say the misfortune of our current president assuming office as the leader of ECOWAS, and we now have a crisis on our hands. And remember, if this crisis lingers, it will not, we should stop deceiving ourselves. Anything that happens to all these countries, Chief has mentioned, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, and if you want to add Guinea to a large extent, it will affect us, definitely. So we need to be looking at strengthening alliances at the sub-regional level with ECOWAS and the rest, not creating confusion. Because these people will be where they are and be watching what is going on. Look at how they've turned Ukraine and Russia into a theater of war, and they are still where they are. Look at what happened in Syria. We have not come out from there. So you want to turn Africa, so we should be talking about building alliances, not creating problems. Not only at the ECOWAS level. We had this free trade agreement we signed not too long ago, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement after, that brings the entire African economy together, looking at economic integration at the African level. So if we can, cooperate with ourselves more, because when we are partnering with ourselves more, we are partnering as equals and not necessarily master servant or leader and superpower and underpower or underdog, as it were. So we can work, if we can work with ourselves better, definitely it will make sense. And I still want to bring up this issue that she raised up along the way, that we had, before now, we had this special arrangement with the Chinese government, with the central bank and the Chinese economy, where we could do this, our currency swap. So instead of trading with the dollar before we can trade with ourselves, we keep the dollar aside. That would have, if we had leveraged that, it would have given us the gains that we are supposed to be enjoying now from a fall in prices, because we will be getting things there cheaper, at least in the interim. So what happened to that policy? These are questions we need to be asking. What happened to that policy? Then again, we need to look at how we manage our economy. Look, our resources now they are becoming infinite. They are not they are becoming less infinite, as it were. Countries are looking at not just the Russia-Ukraine crisis and the fall in demand of oil from China that will affect the price of crude oil. Countries are moving away from fossil fuel energy transition. So we should be planning, how do we manage our economy beyond oil in the next 10, 20 years? We don't plan that way by coming on national television and saying we are going on holiday, go and enjoy a token has been sent to your account. That's not the language a country who is having a financial tightening should be looking at. That's not a country that's not the language our economy should be speaking now. We should be speaking at how do we reduce the cost of governance? How do we improve in investments that will diversify our economy, that will improve the quality of life? Those are the kind of issues we need to be looking at.
All right. As we are rounding up, because we really don't have much time again to talk about this, but I know we still have a whole lot to talk about. But then, just like we have established that, of course, China will bounce back, because this is not the first time they have been hit by something like that. They will still bounce back. But then again, our country, you talked about how we can manage our economy. Now the question is, how do we reduce this overdependence on countries like China and in fact, the Western world? Because every time we keep getting loans from World Bank, from this, from that. I know other countries get loans, but ours it's so like heartbreaking that when we get this loan, we don't even know what we use it for. They say they are getting loan for maybe to plug into agriculture, and at the end of the day, they're still where we are. So how do we reduce this overdependence? Because if we are, you mentioned that we are a consuming nation, not a producing nation.
We're consuming and consumer.
We consume a whole lot and we don't produce much. Not that we don't produce at all, but we don't produce much. But then, if we are a producing nation and we export so much, things like this shouldn't be bothering us. But here we are today. We are talking about it because if this persists, we are going to suffer.
Yes.
It's going to affect us. So how do we, juggle through this whole thing and make ourselves self-reliant?
It's okay. Thank you very much. I want to tell you that the Nigerian situation is a terrible situation, very terrible situation. You know, let me just rush because you said the time is no more there. We lack patriotism. We are corrupt. Nigeria is a corrupt nation. There is a whole lot of tribalism in Nigeria, you know, and indiscipline, falsehood, issue of falsehood. We are a giant of Africa and all that. Let me get to another issue, another one briefly. You look at Nigeria, I want to tell you, we are talking, if I can say many things that we can do, go into manufacturing, go into agriculture, go into this. Nigeria, what we are exporting today, we have so many things to export. Ginger, garlic, vegetable, coconut. Do you know that we import coconut from Benin Republic and Ghana into this country? You know, so we can do all those things, and you know, the manufacturing can give us whatever thing we want, just like China. The things we are doing today in Nigeria are the little we learned from China, that was transferred from China. Poultry farming, fishery, you know, snail farming, honey, and all these things. They are the ones we learned from China. But up to today, what are we making out of it? Our export on these other areas are so narrow that oil, crude oil, still accounts for over 80% of our export. 80% of our export, crude oil, as I'm talking to you, it still accounts for between 70 to 80% of our export. So if it is like that, we will plan. But I'm telling you that we are on planlessness. Nigerian government is on planlessness. It is on squandermania. Is it where they are sharing money in the National Assembly? Is it where the executive is sharing money? Look at the various governments locally, maybe state and all that. Every 8 years, a government goes, the new one comes in and starts to build road. It's not that when you know, this other one comes, you leverage on what the other person has done. Leaving the things that will give us foreign exchange, like tourism. You know, so we don't look at all those areas. We are just consuming and consuming and consuming. Even the ones China has taught us, let us leverage on those small things. You know, if you produce a chicken here on poultry farming, you can sell it. Look at our palm oil. Palm oil and the crude oil, they are almost, I think palm oil is the price is higher in the international market than crude oil. You know, but we are not looking into it. State governments can start to do that. We can look into cocoa, groundnut, and all these things. So it is Nigeria is a failed nation. I am telling you, it's a failed nation. Our leaders are not planning for anything. They are just consuming the money we got from crude oil. After doing that,
we can still get it working again.
We can hope. Okay. And they go to tax the common people. The worst thing is that taxing the less privileged, the low people, are bearing the brunt of this tax. You know, so we have to. Our leaders have to have a rethink because we are finished. So Nigeria is nowhere to be found.
No, but let me just you know, there's still some bit of a hope.
I said
yes, you know, like look at what is happening in Anambra. Like the state government, he mentioned coconut and palm oil. You see, the state government is giving out,
which was imported.
Yeah, but you see that I'm expecting great things to happen in the next 5 years in this state.
Yes, certainly I'm expecting so.
So it starts from there. Incidentally, there's a course I taught the other time, political economy, and I was alluding to what the current governor, a lecture he gave at the University of Benin some time ago. Can Nigeria be the China of Africa? And I told them that, look, if you look at that article and some other things that have been written around it, there is hope.
With good leadership,
with the political will, the political will, the sovereign.
Good leadership. These are people you have in power at maybe the national level, president and the National Assembly. It is a waste of manpower.
Well, everyone is entitled to
Yes,
his or her
that's
own
my
opinion.
opinion.
Thank God we put a disclaimer there that you are entitled to your own opinion. But then again, let's keep hope alive. Things can start working again. We can, transform it. It has started with here in Anambra State. You can see that the governor has really come out to say that agriculture, we bring back agriculture, and then we gain so much from agriculture by sharing coconut and palm seedlings. And when this thing starts, when we start harvesting this seedling, I mean, it will be a great deal for us
next
right
3
here in
years and
Anambra
5
State.
years,
I want to
coconut
say
and palm
kudos to the
produce.
governor of Anambra State on that. And then we want to say a very big thank you to both of you for joining us on the show this morning. Thank you so much, Chukwunoso Ekesiobi, for being here this morning.
Thank you.
And also to you, Ichie Michael Dumede. Thank you also for
Thank
joining
you.
us.
The two moderators. You guys are wonderful.
No, I like our combination.
Okay. Thank you so much for being here. And my name is Chidek Maoranwa. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. See you again tomorrow. And from my colleague,
Ajulu Chukwuka, we say thank you. Tomorrow we'll definitely get to do it again, God willing. Bye.